Hi, Auronda and Alfredo. Such a pleasure to have you as my podcast guest today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Lisa.
I'm really excited, and I think we have a lot to chat today. Before we dive deep into those questions, I usually ask a few warm-up questions on this podcast. So let's start with, and you can go in the order you prefer. If there is an artist from history that you would love to meet, who would it be and why?
Oh, good question. Then for me, is Dante is a poet because I think that he was the first one that discovered the metaverse. I mean, all the layer or this virtual layer that he blend together. And yeah, I think that this was like the pioneer of the metaverse.
I was about to pick someone actually from the same epoch, more or less, but on a visual side, he's not a poet, he was a painter. Peter Bruegel, the Elder. I thought actually, all his visions as well, that kind of are related to this kind of imaginary world or other places or other spaces, that it could be really a visualization of what we figured it out now to be the metaverse. So yes, that's funnily enough, actually, we pick, people who are kind of living centuries ago.
Yeah. Amazing choices for sure. And talking about an artwork that you would love to own, and if price was not an issue, what would it be?
Oh, gosh, this is a good question. Then for me, for sure, is Louis Bourgeois and the Maman.
You can't steal that. I was about to say the same. That's not fair.
Same, even for you. The spider, yes, the Maman for sure. Because,
not the spider, actually. No, not the art. The artist will be the same, not the spider. No, we'll go for, I think, one of those installations where she hang this kind of textile shapes and kind of anamorphic bodies, probably, or install them in a certain way, which was actually, she was sewing the thing together and creating these anamorphic bodies. I would choose that one, probably.
As again, beautiful choices. And then talking about places where you've seen art beyond galleries and museums, what are those unexpected places that you've encountered great art?
In Italy, for example, there are many. One special place for me is called La Scarzuola, and it's a place, it's an architecture made by Tommaso Buzzi and represent an ideal city. And there are all these little palaces that are surreal, and this for me was kind of unexpected, even because it's really hard to get there. It's not easy, even with a car. It's really hard to be in the top of the mountain, discover this place, not open to the public. Then yes, or probably another place could be some maids in North Italy. I love maids.
I was about to say a similar thing, actually. For me, is the monster. The Park of the Monster is in Bomarzo, which is in Lazio, which is this kind of a weird sort of a garden / park, which is like full of this kind of a stone sculpture about monsters. And I've always been fascinated by that place. I'm not quite sure why. But yes, to me, that could be an interesting, not necessarily an art space, but something that you encounter something that it kind of makes you think.
Yeah, it's all about culture in general, because art is such a big term, and it's not only something like on canvas or sculpture, it's architecture and history that comes with it.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's just about when you step into something that you're not quite sure what it is or how to deal with that. And that's very often is part of a cultural journey in a way by someone else, and like kind of a presenting or sort of a figuring it out a way for an audience to engage with. And that's something that it's you would define it as art.
Yes, and also those places that you mentioned, they're probably for sure places that are so memorable for you. Talking about something that art that is timeless or iconic, what are the key factors for you that will determine those pieces?
So for me, for sure, an artwork that can be timeless is like an artwork that have to provoke thought in all the time, all the era. That's one characteristic for sure. Then across all the generation.
That's a very difficult. That's a very high bar, I would say. To me, I think it's it's a set of criteria. Really, there's not only one. But for instance, if it speaks of its time, it's one of the criteria. If the artwork, you know, kind of is kind of using the material of what is made, and it could be, you know, pixels or coding rather than stone in a very innovative way. That's also another criteria. If you kind of expand the way you were mentioning that, the way the expanding thinking, the expanding thought, that's another criteria for sure. So there's no one element that I would say I will just evaluate a work as a great work of art. Is a combination of things actually, which is also the same combination of things that I guess that validates an artwork in space and time, because there's no one person deciding that artwork has value or not. Is some sort of a social agreement through, you know, generations and through different situations, that, you know, there's groups of people, communities, small or large, that, you know, they recognize that work has something to say, and therefore it has some sort of a value, which is then validated by, I don't know, the legacy system if you are in contemporary art, or the innovation system if you are in digital art.
Because if you think about digital art, now there is all this hype, and now all the art world are discovering these artists that they were not relevant 50 years ago. And no one know now, only because I know that digital art was not a relevant portion of the contemporary art.
Yes, for sure. And I think this question, it changes so much based on like who is answering it and cultures, traditions, and whatnot. And it will change 50 years from now with all of the technology and everything that's happening. So it would be nice to ask this question, all the artists, like 50 years from now, and see how it changes.
Yes, it could be, how it changes. I think it would make totally sense.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And that's a really great segue for us to chat a little bit about you. Like, I know you come from slightly different backgrounds, but that's also how like you see each other working together as a duo, because you bring different backgrounds and experience to the table and use it to the same passion of digital and media art. Maybe for a little bit, talk about your background, some projects you've done before you started working together.
Yeah. So I started my career during my studies at the university, because I studied digital art many years ago, more than 20 years ago. And at the time, no one cared about digital art. In the room at the university, there were like 3 students there. And then slightly, year by year, step by step, I tried to organize exhibition about digital. I couldn't fully because there were no market at the time. And but I try because I opened different gallery around the world. Then I try to fit inside some exhibition about digital in the last 20 years. And then after many years in London, I met Alfredo. Then we met together during Freeze. And we start talking about the future, about art and contemporary art. And we find that we have in common all this interest about digital, and we started to work together. That's the short story.
Yeah, that's a very short story. Yeah, that's great, actually. Yeah, and I do have a background in first in design and then in media production, but then really I made my career as an art curator, as a contemporary art curator. And then in the last, kind of 5-6 years after we met and we started to discuss about the sort of expansion of contemporary through technology and new technology. Somehow the whole sort of background made sense. Suddenly it's okay, that's we can combine things actually. So that's why we work on the art and advanced technology type of media, because it's part of both background somehow and combined with the curatorial approach for kind of a contemporary art in general.
And I know you worked, you work and travel a lot to different markets, like you travel to UK a lot and you spend time in Middle East. Do you see any differences in art markets in general, but also their approach to presentation and conversations about digital and media art?
Yes, there are many differences. For example, in Middle East, they have this focus about digital art, museum gallery. There are museum gallery that are really attentionous about all this topic, and they try to fit in their exhibition, their talk, to look at the future basically, because our cities that are projected in the future compare about Europe or America.
Yeah, I think there are a few hubs, let's say, where kind of that new technology combined with art are kind of more prominent than others. And for sure, the MENA region is one of them. Is quite distributed as an approach. In Europe, you might have, I don't know, London, maybe Paris, maybe Zurich, maybe.
But there is no market there. I mean,
it's very difficult to create some sort of a market for that in the States. It could be Miami, I guess.
Yeah, and in Asia.
In Asia, Hong Kong for sure, and Seoul as well. That's also quite interesting. So there are differences because it also depends on the cultural legacy of those regions and how big is the kind of the traditional, so to speak, art world and the legacy art world, how strong are kind of entrenched certain way of collecting, for instance, and mediating the content and institutions, and how forward thinking are maybe other region because they have a younger demographics, for instance. There are kind of a almost logistical question for that.
Yes, for sure. And then one of the first projects that you've done was the Infinity Art Museum. So you were trying to bridge the gap between physical space and digital art. Tell us more about it. And I know it's about making arts coexist in the metaverse. And for a lot of listeners, for example, who are not into digital art or not knowing enough, maybe start talking about metaverse, what it is.
What it is, we are building the meaning of the metaverse now with all the curator, all the artists. Probably it's really hard to give a definition about metaverse right now. Probably in 10 years or in 15 years, we are going to have a precise definition about. For us, it's like a step by step. And we, with the Infinity Art Museum, we try to build this museum, bridging physical and virtual artwork. And yes, for the first time. And Alfredo, what do you want to add about?
I was thinking about the metaverse actually that I'm in Doha now. I'm directing the Museum of Art, Media and Technology, the Media Majoris, and we just ended an exhibition focused on the notion of the metaverse, which I didn't organize because I just joined the team actually. But it was interesting that, you know, one of the questions posed by the exhibition, it was the metaverse always existed, just the format changed. And one of the examples brought forward, it was the one of the book, basically the novel, you know, which is you can argue is an earlier form of metaverse in a way, because you open, you read it, you completely figure it out, situation, environment, characters, stories, and by the, you know, when you're there, you're somewhere else. So it's an interesting, actually, thought experiment, let's say. So that's an answer. What is the metaverse? Is whatever actually expand your imagination in a way.
Yes, I love that definition, and it's really great connection to talking about like reading a book, being inside of the narrative and fully immersed in the experience. But also like starting talking about the exhibitions or like what organizations and museums are doing. Do you have any favorite projects that some like galleries or museums done so far, talking about metaverse and digital art, media art?
A lot of institutions actually organized kind of a digital art in the last 30, 40 years. Really, it's not new actually. The Whitechapel did actually many in the 70s an exhibition about electronic arts. So it's
even the White Cube in London.
And there was actually, you know, an exhibition a few years ago. I think it was probably already 5-6 years ago. It was pre-COVID. The Serpentine, I think, did an exhibition because they have a team about art and technology, and they did organize an exhibition. I thought it was even with Chaos, this kind of a big sort of pop artist and big sculpture, but they organized the whole exhibition in collaboration with Roblox, I think. And the whole Serpentine was brought into Roblox platform for gamers. And there was I don't know, 1 million gamers actually gaming worldwide through the spaces of the Serpentine. I think it was an interesting thing because they were not physically there. They were accessing the project through Roblox. But there are many examples as this one, and it's more about actually what the artists are kind of trying to figure it out and achieve and reach out to than the institution itself. Most of the time, actually, the innovation is driven by artists in that sense, and the institution supply basically the infrastructure for it and the know-how and possibly the funding but the audience is almost actually is a vision for the artist.
For sure. And right now you are working on your project. You're co-directors of Multiplicity XXnft. So it's a curatorial and publishing platform where you explore media and different, I would say, digital arts and diversity in art and new technologies. Tell us more about the platform, what type of artists you work with, and what is your curatorial vision with this organization?
Yeah. With this platform, we're trying to support artists, underrepresented artists. And in the last few years, we organized some exhibition, giving them some visibility. And there are some amazing artists that we work with. There's Helen Scheidlin, that for many, many years we work with her. We organize with her a book with the Rizzoli International. She was in the Art by Digital, and we organized with her even another exhibition with the Multiplicity XXnft about the future of art with Victoria Modesta, Florencia Brook, and Genesis Sky.
Yeah, that was one of the examples that we kind of organized something that it was both online and physical. So because we invited the artist to produce the work to be shown in a gallery, which was Art in Space in Dubai. But at the same time, so actually to kind of present the work online, and I thought it was an interesting sort of a hybrid model somehow, which is in between the drop you can do on Super Rare or whatever, with a curatorial idea, narrative, and a number of artists, and the physical group exhibition you can set up in a gallery.
And I really like that. Like, I got a feel when I was browsing the website that you work with artists in a partnership. You also offer them advice. You also help them with opportunities. How an artist can work with you and how they can benefit by being your partner.
It's about finding the sort of a common ground, I would say. It's sometimes there are artists who don't really need curators, let's say, because they have a vision for what they do and how they do it, and which timing are involved, which partner involved, etc., etc. But most of the time, actually, they do also want to have a sounding board for not only exchanging idea about the project and the direction of the project, but also the way to mediate it to an audience. And the audience, it could be an institutional audience, it could be a private audience, it could be a collector audience, it could be other artists, peer audience, let's say, or other curators. So in a way, it's always a conversation that it comes up organically, I would say, and we try to help them actually in terms of positioning their work and organizing exhibition or publication, or taking over actually in Instagram streams for certain institution or networks, and sort of putting together ideas to maximize somehow the impact of the work of the artists. But it's something that it happens almost organically as part of our job of organizing exhibition, conference, or teaching, or whatever, and also part of the artist's work, because as an artist, you're kind of you should try to not to be completely immersed in your world, and either in your studio or in front of your laptop, but try to figure it out, way to share and connect with other peers, for instance, because it's important that you realize what's going on outside as well as inside. And sometimes actually, curators are very helpful in that sense, because they can contextualize an artist's work in different way. They can have an historical reference or a contemporary reference. And they can have a future reference as well, because maybe they know someone else or some institution or some collectors or some museum that they figure it out a way to working on that theme or that topic, and they can suggest to the artist to to make the bridge somehow. So it's really, it depends, obviously, but it's a way as we go ahead and we kind of travel and we work and organize exhibition. You always have this conversation as part of your daily job, really.
Yes, and I do think, like, to sum it up, usually we say that it takes a village to raise a child, but for artists, like, it takes one very passionate arts professional to really put his or her or their career forward. and work in a partnership?
Yeah, it's very rewarding as well, because usually it's about the work, but it is about, you know, what's behind the work and the inputs that the artists or other curators, for that matter. Actually, we work also with other curators very often, because I think is an important element not to be isolated, and kind of try to, you know, kind of create some sort of a good vibe, in a sense, in the space.
Yes, and also talking about art collectors. So you're also offering advising on collecting crypto art and NFTs. So a lot of people are still hesitant whether NFTs have value and how relevant they can be in building their portfolios. Maybe we will start the conversation talking about the desirability of NFTs and what they can add to someone's art portfolio.
Yeah, for example, then we advise collector, but the first things for us is start from the artist and from the idea. This is really relevant. If the artists have a good idea and they are keen to associate with some curator that can guide them and suggest their work to some collector, then it's our job, and we are super keen to do that. And yes, and there are, because with NFT there are a lot of artists, no, and there is no selection for us. Then for now, no, there are only few curator, and for example, in the digital world, only recently the artists understand what's mean curator, because before they worked without. At one point, they wanted to enter in the contemporary art, and they didn't know how to do that. And then we matched these two worlds about digital art and contemporary art, advising them, and advising even collectors that are completely different compared to the contemporary art world.
Yeah, and it's not that we kind of, when we put together a project, exhibition, or idea, we select certain number of artists because they working with NFT or digital edition or whatever. We look at the work of the artist, you know, the direction, the originality of the practice, and the impact and the vision as well. And then whatever means they use it, it can be, you know, digital, with an NFT sort of a string of code, or you know, marble. It doesn't really matter, really, but it's more about what the artist is saying or trying to say, and for what reason, and what is the means is using, and the ways is mediating the work. And we can help with that, obviously. But that's the exciting part, is not the medium in itself, really.
Yes, and I feel like with NFTs, it was earlier, maybe like a year and a half ago, where people say, oh, I want something hanging on my walls. I don't want to have something that I see on my screen. I'm like tired of my phone. And then we got like TVs and like digital screens where you can now like showcase all of those beautiful works in your space, whether it's home or office. But are there any risks when collectors browse NFTs or digital art in terms of buying them? Because there are risks when buying like quote unquote fine art that we think about, like art on canvas, in terms of like reinvesting or getting return on investment later.
Yeah, I think it's the same risk, really. That kind of a risk management or risk assessment doesn't really change, because I mean, it's the old good advice is to actually buy something because you really like it, because it speaks to you, because you can see something in that work that is resonant with, you know, your life or whatever. Again, if it's digital sort of a 01s or marble, it's really about the collector approach and the capacity of the artist to transfer what she or he wants to say, the message and the content and the vision for it. So the risk is the same, really. It's not, I don't know, that's my opinion. Maybe, Aura, you have a different take.
No, for me it's the same risk. You should approach an NFT in the same way that you approach a painting or a marble or something like that. You have not to research, look at what kind of exhibition the artist did, the concept, curator, museum, gallery, is the same approach, basically. Maybe, I mean, the NFT artists, they have less history behind compared with the track record that we have with painting or wherever. But the approach is the same. You have to look now at the history of the artist.
There are also, if I may add, two schools of thoughts about, collecting, and the collectors who really wants to know the artist and personally and following and having close contact with that, or the collector who really focus on the work, regardless who made it. So that's a personal approach, and they tend actually with digital art, they really tend to associate the value with the artist itself, either anonymous or known. With the legacy, probably artwork is, I would say, probably the work is what is in the forefront. But again, it depends, because once a collector starts to collect vertically, then they get to some point that this contact is made, and then usually goes on well, but maybe not.
And a lot of questions that I hear when people collect digital art is the question of copyright and the way artists produce it, because we hear a lot that AI is sometimes part of creating an artwork, and it goes beyond just digital art. Like, I know a lot of artists who create artwork on canvas, or sculptors. They use AI as like a research tool first. And a lot of collectors get scared right away, like, we need something quote unquote original. How would you advise your collectors in terms of digital art and the use of AI?
Again, it's a bit research. I would say it's really about, doing your homework.
I think that, and because there are some artists that they are really keen to use AI, and they are not scared about using AI. Is their practice, for example, take some picture from other artists and blend together. Even the contemporary art, there are some artists that work in that way. And now, for example, to resolve this issue, there are some companies that are developed some app to see in which percentage that artist took other picture from other artists or non-artists. And you at the end, you can decide, you can speak with the artist, the reason behind that should be not only to steal other picture, but there is should be like a thought behind.
Yeah, but referencing other art is part of art history, always been there.
Yeah.
And so that's not a new thing either. I mean, it's but also you have a lot of digital artists who are building their own databases, for instance, based on their previous work, and they use AI in a very intelligent way as a tool, really, without actually having that preoccupation to accessing a database which is proprietary, or they're using databases which are actually free of use because maybe they're public databases. You have different options, and this AI is there as a tool, really. It's not replacing the creative output that is kind of enhancing it, and collectors, I think it's they should do the same. I mean, it's like, it's if they're really interested in certain artwork or practice of an artist, you know, you observe it, you evaluate, you compare, you go around, you see things, and then if you really want to buy, it's because it just speaks to you somehow. Otherwise, why would you?
Yes, that's a really great point. And like what I really like about your work as a duo, as an organization, like you're trying to position and contextualize where digital art is, because we all have this or know this labels like modern art, contemporary art, and we all try to understand what is happening by putting a label on it. So how do you see digital art as part of contemporary art? Or is it like separate for you?
No, for sure it's not separate. It's like a continuity, no, Alfredo, like we said often, the digital art
is an expansion, really, so completely, as the contemporary was an expansion of the modern, of the classical art. It's a journey. It's just maybe the end tip of it, of human culture in terms of visual art, but it's not separate. It's not replacing. It's just, you know, an evolution of it to some extent. And we can see more and more this hybridity coming into play. So you do have native digital artists wanted to experiment and present physical output, as we've seen with Art Dubai, for instance, where we curated the Art Dubai Digital, and a lot of established contemporary artists that they really want to reach out to not only new audience, but to experiment with new format as well for their art, and using digital or tools or kind of different formats in a way that is not possible to do with traditional formats, being that, you know, time-based or whatever. And that's a very interesting thing, because they show an interest in expanding their practice in a way. And that, to me, it's, you know, it should be appreciated.
For sure. And one of the biggest projects you're working on this year is curating the digital section of an Art Dubai. Like, it's an art fair, and I think it's such a great platform for providing visibility for those artists, but also inviting audience from different types of life come in and get educated and acquainted with what digital art is. Tell us a little bit more about your vision and curation of the show.
Yeah, Art Dubai Digital, that's happened in 2024, was one of our main research of the last year. And for sure, one of our main idea was about a holistic approach of the artists, all the AI and robotic blender between body and robotic, poetry and languages, and all the mental health, because there are some artists that are working with art, mental health, digital art.
Yeah, and the other element that it was very present, it was this kind of a physical and digital approach that we mentioned earlier, because there was actually probably a need as well to kind of demystify the digital arts award in a way that is only for nerds and only for tech bro people, etc., etc. I think it's much more than that, and there was most of the participants, actually, in terms of artists, were women, for instance, and most of them, they produce physical output as well as digital. So there was this kind of a combination of installation, sculpture, robotic arms, and different immersive experiences, something that was really tangible for the audience to experience. And that was, I think, a necessary leap, you know, in curatorial practice in terms of digital art, because is not just about rectangular screen on a wall, that's for sure. And that scale of the project really actually brought home this idea that it's really an expansion of contemporary art.
Yes, and it's such a great project. Can you share with us maybe some memorable conversations or responses you got from the visitors about what they saw?
For sure, with the installation about robot and AI that was at the entrance of the fair, with the artist Alfredo, can you remember the name?
The Sogwen Chang, you mean?
Yeah, so sorry, Sogwen Chang.
Hong Kong, London-based artist.
Yeah, and she worked together with this robot and the data that she collected, and she made all this painting that was kind of poetic stuff, no? Seeing a human body that paint with a robot, and all the people stopped there, and was totally astonishing piece of art, piece of history.
Yeah, in terms of quote, I think the funniest one, it was actually from I think it was Her Highness Sheikh Al Latifa. When she came in,
yes.
she visited the three section of the Art Dubai, so the modern, the contemporary, and the digital. She spent far more time in the digital than in the other two, and then I think in the end she was talking with the CEO. Benedetta, and she mentioned, and she told, like, okay, last year you were trying to convince me that the digital is important. This year I can see for myself. It was a great line, actually.
Yes, for sure. And I'm so happy that the exhibition and your project was well received and got so many great positive reviews. Are there any misconceptions that you would like to break on this show about digital art or art world in general that people might think that this is one of them?
Yes, probably is inside the word NFT, because I mean you cannot call this movement like a contract, because an NFT is a contract. It's not a technique. Okay, then this is a misconception, and probably we should try to find a right word to define this movement, like not cubism or futurism or something like that. But I don't know, could be a experience movement, digital movement, not anymore digital, something like that. But for sure, NFT is a word that we should try to change.
It's more about because it's just a medium, really, and it's
Yeah.
you don't call a painter a canvas artist. Why should you call a digital artist an NFT artist? It's just NFTs.
Yeah.
They can choose to inscribe their work with an NFT, but maybe not. I mean, maybe they just do kind of a digital work, maybe in addition, maybe not, or maybe they realize in installation, but the drive and the origin is completely digital. So it's just one way to kind of distribute your work in a way, but it's not prescribing about a whole set of practice at all.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. And I think, like, with the word NFT itself, it became such a buzz, quote unquote, word with sometimes negative connotation, and people just don't look beyond the word itself. There are so many skill and ideas and concepts that artists put into producing those works. But also for all of the aspiring curators who might be entering the art world and would like to curate and work with digital artists, what advice would you give them?
Made a lot of research.
Start doing exhibition and project and drops or whatever. I mean, it's
meeting artists, meeting all the artists that you can. And now it's even more easy because about digital artists, they have their studio visit in a virtual world. that you don't need anymore to move around the world. You can call and enter in their metaverse and visit all their collection.
Yeah, and you can realize project virtually, completely around a narrative, around an idea. It's, you know, you don't really need to have some sort of a physical venue to use it. You can, you know, you can, and but also you can start virtually first and then figure it out how it works and adjust and then add the physical venue as you go ahead. So I think it's more about putting in practice your thoughts, really. It's this, you know, showing up is out of the job, as they say. So I think it's important that you do your research, you meet people, you talk with artists, but also you concretely realize an exhibition, a book, a conference, a symposium, whatever, to put yourself out there and your thoughts and getting feedback and, you know, kind of, and then adjusting as you go ahead.
Yes, and I think it really changes the art worlds, because when I speak to a lot of curators, especially emergent ones, they're like, my dream goal is to make this blockbuster show in a gallery museum where there will be works on loans coming and lots of things. But then to make it a traveling show, it's a hassle. Versus if you do it in a digital space, it can go anywhere. It can go from fair to fair, from gallery to gallery, and more people can see it. So I think that's the beauty of digital art.
But also in terms of resources, I mean, to do a traveling show is a massive resources in terms of fundraising, for instance, and partnership and marketing and logistics and whatnot. So obviously that's also part of the work of a curator. But, you know, if you're emergent, you're just coming out from, you know, whatever university course, I mean, you start to work with your friends. Usually you start to work with the people you know. And just that one, it just keep you going somehow. And the virtual is something that it can facilitate enormously this.
Yes. And looking ahead into the future, how do you see the world of curation and what you will be doing, like kind of projects you're excited to do? Do you have a dream project that you would like to do in the future?
Right now, it's kind of a dream project, really.
Right now we are working on a dream project that is Web2 that is like an endless exhibition that try to bridge the gap between the last century in digital art and now all the history about digital art.
And it's ever evolving because every iteration has a different list of artists, a different curator we're working with, and that's different region of the world as well. So that's quite exciting. Yeah, the future trends.
Then probably future trends are influenced about all the technologies that year by year there are new releases like the Apple Vision Pro that we still don't know what's going on, because there are some artists that they start right now to work with. Then probably next year we are going to see the result of this research.
Yeah, and then in terms of content, trend about content, I mean, you mentioned the holistic approach, this idea of spirituality, I think is an important trend that more and more artists are figuring out a way to use the digital for a sort of well-being and holistic approach. The interdisciplinary as well aspect of culture is important, like poetry with digital, for instance, or text-based with visualization. That's something that is really important to highlight, because it's there is a big sort of interest in that from artists themselves, first of all. So it's when artists are interested in something, they cascade down to collecting and to institutions and to culture at large after a while.
And
Another
probably even the general public are going to be more involved in the creation of an artwork. If you think about Krista Kim or Och, they collect
co-authoring, yes,
co-authoring is another trend for sure that is going to be more visible in the future.
Which somehow implies an approach from the artist to give away some of the control as well. Yeah, which is an interesting element, because usually, you do have this kind of idea of the artist completely immersed and not wanting to share any other person's thought around it. But I think here in this case, I think the co-authoring, the multiple authoring, let's say, more than co-authoring, that's something that is interesting, because you have the artist not really creating the work, creating the condition for the work to happen. But the work itself is generated by a community, which is the basic of participatory art. I mean, it's nothing really new again, because you had the happenings in the 60s, and the Fluxus, etc., and it was based on the same principle. Now it's sort of a translated and nurtured and elevated somehow through a digital approach, which is much faster and much more pervasive and much more broad as an impact.
Yes, I'm personally really excited to see what's going to happen even like 5 years from now, because technologies change so fast.
Definitely.
Totally. Are going to change everything in the next 5 years, but even in 1 year, or 2 years.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm really excited to see what you come up with, like what exhibitions, and see your research being published some way or another in a book or articles, because I think you have a lot to say and you're doing an amazing job. And for all of the listeners who would like to learn more about you, what you do, and do like their own research, where they can go.
They can follow me on my Instagram, Auronda Scalera, or on my LinkedIn, Auronda Scalera, on Spotify, on Google, wherever. I'm everywhere.
Yeah, same for me. But I use the curator view tag for both Instagram, X, and LinkedIn, and whatnot. I've tried to go with that, so because my name is very long and complex, so curator view is easier somehow.
Wonderful. It's catchy and easy to remember. And it's such a pleasure to have this conversation with you both today, learn more about digital art. And I know that we can talk for hours, because there are so many different aspects of the industry, of the medium itself, and all of the amazing artists that we can just like chat and hope it's not the last time we have this conversation, and we'll reconnect in 5 years or so to see
or even before.
Virtually, or who knows, on the moon.
Thank you, Lisa, to host us on this amazing podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.